River Health Services in Hopkinton opens a new COVID-19 testing and respiratory clinic in the parking lot of the main building. With winter coming, Wood River Chief Executive Officer Allison Croak says the center needed a testing site that was close by but not in the main building. The trailer was leased with funds from the CARES Act. Officials say test samples are sent to Eastside Clinical Laboratories in Providence, and results are usually available in about 3 days.
The managing director of Paragon Trust Company and tax and private client practitioner joins us to bring a common sense approach to money in a world of total insanity. Let's welcome Tony D'Angelo.
All right, every Tuesday we sit down and chat with Tony D'Angelo about a number of different things. Tony always finds his way to find some of the most interesting topics. Now, Tony, just to give you a heads up, I started the show out talking, and I got an avalanche, literally, of Facebook messages and emails. I started the show out with, I'm now very down, and I don't trust the mechanism of voting anymore. I see too many things that have gone wrong with this, and I think people out there are in total agreement with me.
Good morning, and proud to be among everyone today. Lee, and I was, and this is kind of generational. I share your view. I mean, because the vote and the freedom of America is what people fought and died for and protested for, and we can go right on down the line. But something struck me very funny. The other day I had sent around the 234 pages of Wayne County affidavits in Michigan. And the amazing thing about these affidavits, at least to me, there's 109 affiants, people that are actually writing, their testimony out. 19 of these affidavits are handwritten. Now, different people, different places, different notaries, largely all kind of saying the same thing. What really struck me, and maybe because I am a child of this generation, the handwritten affidavits. People who came in for a day's work, didn't own a computer, whatever the case may be, spilling their guts out on paper. Now, if you were old enough to have received hate mail, I have. If you were old enough to receive a love letter, surprise you kids, I have. You realize the passion of something that's handwritten. Like in the firm, we used to have a joke. We used to have these legal pads, and back in the pre-computer days, everybody would be writing on legal pads. You knew the guy that was pouring his heart out and working the hardest because he had the biggest blue mark on his hand from the cheap ink on these pads. And it's the thing that when you see this, and if ever you talk to somebody who's been in combat, talking about somebody who's received a Dear John letter where the girl has said, I don't want to see you anymore, and he runs into machine gun fire, there's passion in that. And what they're saying is, one of your panelists yesterday had said, there's really, this is all kind of hearsay. No, there's something genuine there, because you had to be there, kid. You had to understand written passion. Now, the last time I know, and I'll just say this factually, that people in disparate locations writing exactly the same thing at the same time. I mean, we're talking the four Gospels. I mean, it's just so something's there. Is that a legal standard? I'll leave that for the experts. But I, like you, don't trust voting, because when people have that kind of passion, and when people are writing in that kind of way, saying this is what actually took place, it actually took place. Man, it's a mess.
And you know what, too, just one side note on that, and then you can get on to the economic part of this, is that if we do lose that confidence in voting, I don't know how you replace that. Like, I don't know what you tell people if they don't think that their vote means anything. It is about as low as you can get. I mean, forget about taxes and this and that and all that.
All secondary.
It is, right? I mean, if my voice doesn't mean anything, then what are we doing?
It's all secondary, and the fact that if we have no control, and if you make people more cynical, I mean, again, I'm old enough. I remember Watergate and kind of like the great falling away from all things political. Oh, it's all corrupt. Where Ronald Reagan had actually brought that back. It's going to take years, but yet it's going to take people on both sides saying, we want a true process. Let's do this the right way. I don't see a lot of reaning here. I wish I had a solution. Right now, I don't. All
right, buddy. Listen, you want to talk to me about voodoo economics?
Voodoo economics, yeah, this is amazing. And this is not George Bush and Ronald Reagan voodoo economics. We're back to the manifesto. And I started to read about labor and what's going to happen with labor. I mean, Bolshevik Bernie Sanders, a man who never worked a profit-making day in his life, may be the Secretary of Labor. This is like beyond bonkers. But when you read, there's two things really, labor and child care and social development. But when you read about, in the Biden-Sanders world, what labor is, any kind of independent contracting, any kind of like starting something up from scratch, which often happens in the restaurant industry, is bad, and all the labor has to be, state-sponsored union. Now, one of the things, as far as the tragedy right now, with really what I call the oppression of restaurants, is, does anyone really realize, and I didn't realize this, restaurants are really the greatest social escalator in economics. People start out bussing tables, 10 years later they're owning restaurants or they're owning chains as they get into management. This is a great channel of upward mobility. We're just pulling it away from everybody. But basically, some of the things in voodoo economics, we don't want people to get started. We're not going to give them, breaks and incentives. We're not going to make the contracting rules easier. We're going to just start funding the failing cities in the usual ineptitude and throw more money at them. And there's something really, as a business owner that really frightens me. It's called, we're going to have, since Trump screwed up COVID so badly, we're going to have something called a workplace safety standard so all people can be safe when they go to work. Now, what does that mean? In my office space, I have to put in $25,000 worth of improvements. We're also going to have business loans, but they're going to go to people of color and minorities and whom we think to first. There's other things about workers have an automatic demand right for flexibility. Somebody comes in a job and you say, well, your hours are, 8 to 12, 7 days a week, and or 6 days a week, and 8 to 3 on Saturdays. You're doing shift work, and they come and they say, well, I need a change. Well, sorry, this is the job I gave you. You're supposed to give them a written report as to why you disagree. That goes to the Department of Labor, and really when you read that, you're guilty before you're innocent, and if they don't like what you did, you are fined $10,000. The word union jobs, now I'm not anti-union, my dad was a proud union man, but we're getting back to the winter of discontent in Great Britain in the 1970s, where everybody in the union said, we're just not going to work and freeze the country. It shows up 47 times in the manifesto. We're not developing anything with this other than government control. It's nuts. It's insane. And, of course, you would like for political figures to actually be paying attention to this stuff. I don't know. I can go talk to the trees. Maybe I'll get a little farther.
I was thinking about this last night. What happens when they completely wreck the economy? Right? Let's say they shut us down again. Mm-hmm. And everybody who is hanging by a shoestring is out of business. So now you've got a complete collapse. Everybody's out of work. Because I've heard Justin Trudeau talk about this. I've heard other folks talk about this. Like, it's time for us to have like a restart. We need a restart of the economy. In other words, let's bring everybody down to the same level, and then let's start over again. So if this is almost like an artificial way to wipe everybody out, so now we all start over again, we all have the same amount of pieces and go build the economy back up from there. Well,
yeah, it's really, I'm going to use the word devilish in nature because, it does bring everybody down. It wipes out incentive and then basically kind of keeps everybody in the same front. Yeah, you better believe it. And, I mean, the other thing that really gets me on this thing, and I want to just mention this before we run out of time, is in the manifesto there is universal pre-K and child care, and believe me, women and men struggle with child care, but just a couple of facts here that actually these are CDC statistics, if you can believe the CDC. 70% of all black children are born out of wedlock. They don't have a father and a father influence, and 85% of the men in prison are all fatherless. So what the manifesto says that we're going to make it easier for people to have children, and the state will support them. In other words, let the young women marry the state, But what happens is this: people run around saying Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. Well, no, they don't. Not to you, because what you're doing is you're splitting the family unit in such a way where the young men will have no real incentive other than to, quote unquote, kind of do another version of what they're doing, which is leading to a lot of the messes of what we have. And this goes right across color. I mean, if you look at some places in Massachusetts and Connecticut, they've got the same issues with the same people. Only thing is that they're Caucasian. And it's and it's all a part of, well, the state will bring this great support, and we're getting rid of incentive. I mean, I was old enough to be involved in high school when there was a draft. You kept your grades up. You didn't want to be in a rice paddy with a gun. It's like you don't really improve things by lowering the bar, but somehow these people seem to.
Do you think that was done intentionally? Because
I'm not sure they follow.
No, I mean, like, as far as breaking down the families in particular, you talk about how 77% of black families don't have a father, and there's a percentage depending upon what neighborhood you're in as far as white kids without a father. I mean, do you think that was done intentionally?
Well, to a large extent, but it was an unintended consequence because we had talked about when FDR had set up AFDC in the 30s. And he did that kind of so he would have peace with Eleanor. The only way he could get that through his Solid South and his Democrats to say, well, we're going to do this and keep the father out of the home so this way we could keep black people down. It was, but it wasn't intended to have this reverberating effect through the decades, which, of course, it's had.
And how can we get that out? How can we fix that? I mean, is there a way we can fix that?
Well, I believe there is. I mean, I believe it takes the courage of churches and individuals and people in politics to say, hey, this is wrong. If you're going to give that funding, let's have training. Let's have training where people can learn things and get them off of welfare rather than marrying the state.
Does that do it? Because I think that's a great point. I've thought about this forever. One of the biggest, let's say, missteps of the Republican Party when they run for a statewide office or a congressional seat or a Senate seat is they never venture into the areas of urban America, right? So they never go to New Haven, they never go to Bridgeport, they never go to Hartford because they just don't think that they're going to do anything when they go in there, when it's the exact opposite. Why are you meeting and greeting and socializing and having rubber chicken dinners with folks you know are going to vote for you? Go and meet the folks in Bridgeport. Sit down, have a sandwich with them. Say, listen, what is it that you want? Is it do you want like a skill? Do you want us to try to figure out a way to get you a trade or skill, go to school? What is it? What saves you from this mess that you're in?
It's the difference, Lee, between governance and politics. If you're governing, that's what you're doing. If you're playing politics, you're doing what you need to do to be elected and not offend too many people.
Yeah. Tony, great stuff as always.
Thanks, pal.
All right, buddy.
Everyone.